You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast, Episode 532, Infinite Regress.
Welcome into another episode of Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm John Champion.
And I'm Earl Green, sitting in for Norman Lau. Each week on Mission Log, we examine Star Trek one episode at a time and pick it apart for the morals, meanings, and messages, and try to see if the whole thing stands the test of time.
This week, Infinite Regress, the one where Seven and a cast of thousands wreak some havoc on the Voyager crew. I'll be right back with trivia, but first, Earl, welcome to the show. Norman is taking some personal time off, and while that's happening, we'll have a few special guests in the co-pilot seat, if you will.
Yes, an ever-rotating cast of thousands, completely different from the cast of thousands in this episode.
Yes, yeah, they're not all in your head, or at least not in my head, I don't think.
Well, we'll talk later.
Okay. For those of you who have been listening to Mission Log for a very long time, you know that we rarely ever change our format or our lineup with hosts. Norman is taking some personal time off, as I mentioned. And Earl, I am so glad you have been a part of the Mission Log team for so long. And it's great to have you here to just help us out during this time. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm more than happy to step in. I cannot fill Norman's shoes.
Well, you have different size shoes, different feet.
Well, that's why I can't fill Norman's shoes. I was going to get to that part.
Okay. Sorry.
But at the very least, I can try not to embarrass myself beyond all belief actually sitting behind the mic here.
Yes. Well, and you do have a lot of experience behind the mic, not to mention the fabulous Roddenberry podcast, Genealogy, that you and Norman do, where you're going through Gene Roddenberry's early pre-Star Trek works. So happy with what you're doing on that show. So kind of a natural transition. You know, you spend so much time listening to Mission Log and talking about Gene's work. So why not have you here?
I remember pitching that. This is basically Mission Log, but it's not about Star Trek.
Right.
But that's the great thing about Mission Log. Any show that can stand up to scrutiny, you could Mission Log.
Yep. Coming soon, Super Train. So I will come right back with trivia. Thank you again, Earl. I really appreciate you being here and being able to do this with us. And stay tuned, folks, because I might have some other people in that co-pilot seat who I want you to get to know in Mission Log. So, yes, I will do trivia. And Earl, if you can tell people where to contact us, I would appreciate it.
All right, Mission Log is a conversation about Star Trek. Drop us a line at missionlog@roddenberry.com and join us on X and Facebook at MissionLogPod. While you're at it, leave us a review and rating at Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. And please remember, your comments could be used on Mission Log or Engage on the Roddenberry YouTube channel. And now, something I never thought I would say. Here's John Champion with this week's trivia.
Here we are. All right, let's talk about Infinite Regress. Well, this is based on a story by Robert J. Doherty and Jimmy Diggs, and you may remember that Robert's first credit on Voyager was Vis-a-Vis in Season 4, and Jimmy has sort of been a jack of all trades, and he got his first Trek credit on DS9, and we're coming up very close now to his last credit on Voyager. That's just a few episodes from now, actually. He has just that one last credit to go on the series and in Trek in general. And as we know, nothing is ever as it seems on the credit screen. Two different stories combined to make this episode. One about a single additional personality trying to take over Seven, and the other story pitched by Jimmy about a recovered piece of Borg tech. Brannon Braga loved the tech idea, and Ken Biller really wanted to explore the emergent personality. So the teleplay assignment went to Robert J. Doherty, but both Ken and Brannon had a heavy influence in shaping what we see on screen. In fact, several scenes were rewritten from the ground up by Brannon himself. Now, this was directed by David Livingston. No surprise here, since David is right in the middle of his stride, racking up those Star Trek credits. The most recent of his that we discussed was In the Flesh. Now, as all of you listening know, the production cycle on weekly episodic TV, especially at this time, was breakneck. Production on one episode usually lasted from 6 to 8 days, with episodes constantly overlapping each other and very little downtime for any of the regular cast and crew. Keep that in mind and realize that Jeri Ryan was so new to Star Trek and hadn't seen any of the alien types that she was portraying until being given the script and a bunch of videotapes from DS9 to try to understand what personalities she would be playing and changing on a dime. Let's meet our guest stars. We'll welcome back the Scarlet Palmers as Naomi Wildman, and we meet a couple of representatives of species 6339. I guess Starfleet is just adopting Borg naming conventions now and fully embracing it. Like, hey, where are you from? What do you call yourselves? They don't even ask that at all. The talkative one who we meet is Ven, and he is played by Neil Maffin. And while there's not a huge list of credits on Neil's on-camera resume, he did get his start in the 80s and shows up on Stargate Atlantis, Dead Like Me, and Andromeda. He had a 43-episode run on As the World Turns shortly after he started in the business. And like a lot of Trek actors, though, he also spends a good amount of his time appearing in live theater. This, so far, is his only Trek credit.
Welcome to the Delta Quadrant. Don't you hate it when you wake up and every last one of the voices in your head is screaming?
Prologue. In Cargo Bay 2, 7 of 9 regenerates, but is disturbed by a computer warning that her regeneration cycle is incomplete. Ignoring it, she heads to the mess hall, ravenously eating a large chunk of meat. Her reflection in the fridge door reveals a Klingon male. Act 1. The next morning, Harry reports a surprisingly wide debris field. 7 identifies it as what remains of a Borg cube and suggests a close-up scan. Captain Janeway orders a course change to avoid it. One last thing. Neelix mentions the midnight snacker has struck again, and this time it was a large chunk of meat. And Janeway allows him to replicate locks for the fridge. Later, Naomi Wildman is caught shadowing 7 to impress Janeway and become her bridge assistant. Suddenly, 7 becomes childlike and suggests they play Kadaskat. After playing several rounds and enjoying her playdate with Naomi, B'Elanna hails and interrupts 7, who snaps back to her usual self, leaving for engineering, confused. In engineering, B'Elanna shows 7 a detected Borg subspace frequency. As they work, 7 is overwhelmed by a new voice, introducing herself as the son of Kavak, and assaults B'Elanna akin to a Klingon mating ritual. 7 evades capture, injures a security officer, and is soon cornered by force fields. Tuvok approaches with a phaser, and 7 manifests 3 distinct personalities: Meryl, a frightened young girl, Lorat of the Vulcan High Council, and finally back to the son of Kavak. Tuvok subdues her and takes her to sickbay. Act 2. 7 awakens in sickbay with a cortical inhibitor. She tells Janeway, Tuvok, and the Doctor about the chaotic voices she hears. The Doctor explains that her brain contains 13 additional neural patterns from assimilated individuals, now active and causing her identity shifts. 7 mentions a Borg interlink frequency from the Borg cube debris. Janeway decides to shut it off and returns to the debris field while the Doctor monitors 7's behavior. Neelix tries to cheer up 7, but she dismisses him. He leaves her a crayon drawing from Naomi, which comforts her. In Cargo Bay 2, the Doctor discovers that 7 has been sleepwalking under the influence of one of the neural patterns. They find audio logs of 7 speaking as assimilated individuals, which troubles her. On the bridge, 7 identifies the source of the Borg frequency, a Borg vinculum which interconnects drone minds and purges individuality. Seven asks to beam it aboard to study and shut it down. Janeway hesitates, but agrees, ordering strict security. In engineering, Seven's proximity to the vinculum increases its effect on her, but the Doctor adjusts her inhibitor. They discover a synthetic pathogen attacking Borg technology, likened to Typhoid Mary. Act 3. In Astrometrics, Seven briefs the Doctor and Janeway about species 6339, whose assimilation infected the vinculum with a pathogen. These aliens carried the virus in their bodies, infecting the vinculum upon assimilation, causing the drones to destroy themselves and the cube. Janeway decides to find other members of the species to help Seven, and orders her to start scanning for them. As Seven complies, the voices return. She adopts the manner of a Ferengi, Daemon Tarat, and offers to buy the view screen. Janeway and the Doctor get her back to sickbay by convincing her she has the Ankaran flu. In sickbay, Seven's neural pattern destabilizes, and the force field contains her. She manifests the persona of a frightened woman searching for her son, Lieutenant Gregory Bergen, lost in the battle of Wolf 359. Janeway comforts her. An hour later, Janeway confides in Chakotay about dealing with Seven's personalities. He reassures her of Seven's progress. In engineering, Torres and Tuvok begin taking the vinculum offline. Initially, Seven's neural pattern stabilizes, but the vinculum adapts, worsening her condition. The Doctor aborts the procedure, but it's too late. Seven's neural pattern is completely gone. The others have fully taken over. Janeway is horrified. Act 4. The Doctor and Tuvok report to Janeway. The Doctor has stabilized Seven's brain functions, but it's no longer her in sickbay. Foreign neural patterns rapidly take over, straining her brain. Without deactivating the vinculum soon, they may lose her forever. Tuvok suggests a mind meld to reach Seven's true self. Janeway agrees, granting Tuvok 2 hours to meditate. Chakotay informs Janeway they have found a Species 6339 ship. Ensign Kim reports the arrival of a heavily armed vessel. Janeway hails them and explains their situation. The aliens demand the vinculum, revealing it's a weapon designed to destroy the Borg. They had infected themselves to spread the virus. Janeway agrees to return the vinculum, but only after saving Seven. In sickbay, the Doctor temporarily stabilizes Seven's neural pattern. She awakens, restrained, and the Doctor explains the situation. As the voices return, the Doctor informs her of Tuvok's plan. Desperate, Seven agrees. The voices become deafening, and Seven convulses in agony. The Doctor sedates her. Tuvok finishes his meditation and heads to sickbay. On the bridge, Lieutenant Paris reports the aliens are preparing to attack. Janeway orders shields raised. Tuvok arrives in sickbay. The ship shudders under fire. The Doctor attaches a cortical inhibitor to Tuvok. Tuvok initiates the mind meld, ignoring the foreign personalities manifesting in Seven. He focuses, repeating the meld mantra. In the mental bond, he finds himself in a chaotic, dark world resembling a Borg cube, surrounded by hundreds of screaming, violent people. He searches for Seven. Act 5. The alien vessel hammers Voyager, quickly degrading its shields. The targeting systems and main thrusters go offline. Janeway orders all available power to the shields and has Chakotay manually target their weapon systems. In engineering, Lieutenant Torres prevents the vinculum from adapting, informing Janeway it will be offline in 60 seconds. In sickbay, Tuvok struggles with the personalities in Seven's mind. He sees Seven being assaulted and tries to reach her. On the bridge, the ship is hit, causing the dampening field emitters to go offline. Chakotay switches to emergency power and the emitters work again. Torres resumes calling out the vinculum's dropping power levels until finally it goes dark. In Seven's mind, the violent throngs disappear. Tuvok reaches Seven and they break the meld. Tuvok nearly collapses from exhaustion, while Seven opens her eyes, now alone in her own mind. The Doctor informs Janeway, who orders Chakotay to beam the vinculum into space. The aliens withdraw, and Voyager departs at warp 9. Seven regenerates for nearly a week to recover. Upon awakening, the Doctor confirms her full recovery and fitness for duty. Janeway asks about the other personalities, and the Doctor explains they are dormant. Seven expresses gratitude to the crew. Janeway suggests she can help Lieutenant Torres in engineering. Seven agrees, but says she must see someone first. Later, Seven walks with Naomi Wildman, giving her pads with information to study. She instructs Naomi on various topics relevant to her role as the captain's bridge assistant. Seven then asks Naomi to teach her a recreational activity, specifically Kadaskat. Naomi happily complies. The end.
All right, nicely done on the recap there, Earl. And I like this opening because there's so little dialogue except for the computer. I think that's a bold choice just to go with visuals. Also, speaking of visuals, we got just bowls of random vegetables and some really striking backlit cabinets in the mess hall. I think that's a bold creative choice. And I just like the idea of setting up a mystery right away, just right off the bat.
And you can tell it's going to be a mystery because we have this funky, super wide angle, almost, not quite, fisheye lens going on. When we are hit with that at the top of the show, the first words out of my mouth were literally, "David Livingston, is that you?"
It's true. The telltale sign. I really want to sit down with him one day, maybe as we get toward the end of Voyager, because I'm curious about that relationship between director and DP. Of course, I've said many times I'm a fan of Marvin Rush. He's a guy who has to execute what David has in mind, and stuff like this is very cool visually.
Yeah, and I have to also say, Seven's visit to the kitchen was uncomfortably familiar to me. I'm not saying I do midnight fridge raids that only Machine Gun Tuvok could prevent, but I'm also not saying that I don't do those.
Sure. Your secret is safe or not safe with all of us.
Oh, are we recording?
Speaking of that, the situation in the mess hall, we learn in the briefing then that there are no locks on the cabinets, which I understand. I mean, I wouldn't feel the need to have locks on kitchen cabinets, but there are also no cameras, apparently, anywhere on Voyager in a corridor or leading into a commonly used public space.
Why would you need those?
It's in case someone's raiding the fridge. That's why you need those. Also, Neelix had a leg of Kalaran wildebeest. What about the rest of the animal?
We do not speak of that.
Okay. Okay. All right. Also, I'm guessing now that Kadaskat, kind of like Connect 4, little-ish. Am I off base?
It's Connect 4, but in an octagon. And octagons and hexagons, that's a giveaway that you're in the future.
Oh, it's Space Connect 4.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Absolutely did not see that coming when 7 bit B'Elanna. What a interesting, bold choice. And I know that we're going to talk a lot about this because this episode relies so heavily on performance, but all the multiple quick changes that Jerry Ryan does as Seven, really excellent. And I also think that Tuvok handles those changes very well. Like, interesting to see the difference between B'Elanna responding to something weird and scary, but then Tuvok immediately going into dad mode. Thought that was lovely.
That is in my notes too. That blink of an eye transition from normal Seven to fun Seven, kid Seven.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Also, is this our first mention chronologically of Kadaskat?
I think it is. It may have been mentioned before, like way earlier. You know how Star Trek will do those, like, look, we could play chess, or we could play badminton, or Kadaskat, and just make up a thing. You know, I think it may have been mentioned like that before, but this is definitely the first time we've seen it.
Okay. I was curious about that because it is a reference that, kind of jumping the timeline a bit, keeps reverbing into the modern shows. I mean, we've heard about it on the Paramount Plus shows. Yeah. And so Kadaskat, it's like fodder. It's a thing now.
Yeah.
Another thing that is a thing is unsupervised child with the run of the ship. and not just that, but she is nodding at crew members that she passes on her way, and they're totally okay with her doing whatever it is she's doing.
Yeah. That's very true. Yeah. As we move along, definitely not a surprise to me that scary stuff in Seven's head is scary.
That little step-printed funhouse mirror montage of screaming people on a Borg ship, they're obviously leaning directorially into kind of a little horror movie here.
Yeah.
That was really disturbing. And this is going to come up in later segments of our show because there was one scene that I found extraordinarily disturbing. Like,
good.
Back away from the TV and go touch grass.
Yeah.
Disturbing.
Yeah. But then, okay, we all get to calm down a little bit. We have this really nice personal moment with Neelix bringing Seven the drawing from Naomi. That was like just a very nice slice of life moment that I think we can all relate to.
I liked that scene, and yet also we're getting kind of whiplash here because we can't decide from week to week if Neelix is really sensitive and fully capable of reading the room, or if he's going to be completely annoying Season 1 Neelix.
Yeah. Good point. This is the first time that we hear the word vinculum, and I had to look that up as a kind of a connecting thread or connecting tissue between ideas or objects, which makes obviously a lot of sense. So thank you, OED. And also, I thought a very interesting idea that we have a synthetic virus, and we can kind of like hold that idea for a minute because I think I'll come back to it as well. But I thought it was an interesting conceit that this is a way that another species has decided to combat the Borg.
Some very interesting choices with some historical precedents. Possibly.
Yes, possibly. Yes.
Speaking of which, I was surprised when you said in trivia that they had Jerry Ryan watch Deep Space Nine to get her head around some of the character types that she was going to be playing, because I felt like some of this stuff that she was doing with, kind of clasping, not really clasping her fingers together, but just kind of nervously, touching her outspread fingers together, that was some old school next gen Ferengi energy.
Oh, yeah, good
so
point.
I was surprised that she actually watched DS9, where we have Armin and Max and Aaron actively working to defeat some of the stuff that had become the default presets on Next Gen.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe it was part of the assignment, go watch this, but we will also help direct you, because at least you got David Livingston, who has directed everybody.
Right.
and can kind of guide a little bit along. And, of course, Brannon, who's been there since TNG to help guide that performance along. I did read that, they were using DS9 source material, and I really had to think about it because, okay, B'Elanna is half Klingon. And if you go back to TNG, we don't get a lot of Klingons. We just get Worf mostly. So then just Seven of Nine would be acting like a bad father. So then fast forward up to DS9, a lot more Klingon interplay. So that makes sense. And then a lot of Ferengi, even if you have to maybe attenuate that Ferengi performance a bit. But I do think her characterization, I'm glad it's a characterization that comes back. So we get introduced to it, but then this is somebody who comes back and she gets to inhabit that again. Very, very cool. I did kind of wonder, though, about a scene right after that. Cut to the bridge. Janeway comes back in, sits down next to Chakotay, and questions bringing Seven of Nine on board at all. And I know that they played that with some sensitivity, and I thought it was a good scene, and I think that, sure, that's a question that would pop into your head, but I don't know that they should be having that conversation on the bridge in front of everybody, and it occurs right after that really poignant moment between Janeway and Seven in sickbay, where Janeway's saying, like, I'm not going to let anything happen to you. Like, we will figure this out. I could see a scene like that happening in a different context. Maybe if something else really traumatic had just happened. But that felt like it had gotten moved from the wrong place in the script.
I wonder, kind of putting on the story editor hat, as I am wont to do.
Sure.
Would it have been better if Janeway framed it as, I did this woman no favors by bringing her aboard, and now this is happening, which places the the emphasis of the responsibility on herself rather than, why did we bring her aboard?
Right. Okay. All right. That is a fair way to look at that. Maybe a bit more forgiving than mine. Yeah. And just back to one of your previous notes, which again, I fully agree about. All of this stuff is just shot and edited in a really interesting way when you're cutting from Seven in sickbay and then kind of going inside her mind a bit, like all the disorienting stuff. And then you're going into engineering and the camera is still moving around quite a bit. A lot of fisheye, a lot of disorienting stuff, a lot of handheld, which I love to see going back and forth between these sets. It's just very dynamic and really works to serve the drama. Now, when we come back, I like this line where Tuvok says, "Logic dictates that we go beyond medical science." Really vague, broad thing for him to say. And sure, Vulcan mind melds are risky, but they have kind of been around forever. Even for the Doctor, it's not a totally unknown thing.
This is actually something that is in my notes for discussion because something about that scene just kind of made me think, okay, this does not make sense with where the mind meld should be in Star Trek history. If you were taking the universe, the franchise, as a real place and a real timeline, mind melds should not be a mystery by now.
Right.
But the thing I'll bring up later is the Doctor's reaction to Tuvok's suggestion, which I thought was really out of line, because even if you're just taking it within this show, it's not like Tuvok has never performed a mind meld before.
Yes, exactly. There we go. Okay, we definitely need to come back to that. I want to talk about Species 6339 a little bit, just because there was something really interesting and weird and just intriguing about his voice. And clearly they hired the actor who possesses this voice, but his delivery was just like, I don't quite know how to put a finger on it. First of all, love the costume. We'll get to that in a second. But when he speaks, it's almost like he was recorded separately. It's almost like it was ADR, but it wasn't. But I think it was just really effective because he was so dry, not in a menacing way, but just in this kind of calm, robotic way that I kept rewatching going like, where is that coming from exactly?
Maybe someone directed him, hey, Seven has all the personality and all the personalities in this episode. You can kind of check out for a week.
Yeah, you got none to bring here. Yeah.
Species 6339 has, how do I put this politely, a protrusion, or maybe two, jutting out of the upper bridge of their nose.
Yes.
When this guy is on the view screen, and I don't understand why people walk up into the view screen. You can't. Weren't you sitting at the optimal? I mean, do they not have the follow thing that we have on our phones right now?
Right, exactly.
But he feels the need to step forward directly at the camera, and that almost pokes the camera. And then in engineering, after noticing that, when he's in engineering, when he's aboard Voyager, it just wiggles every time he talks.
Yeah.
And I just started giggling because at that point, I couldn't take that makeup seriously from that point on. Now, it makes sense when you go back after watching the episode and realize that Mike Westmore and his people had to bust out every Alpha Quadrant makeup ever used.
Yeah.
And put it on someone later in kind of the nightmare scenes. And so our guys with their little antenna, it's like Mott the alien from that old Chuck Jones Merry Melody cartoon.
Yes, yeah.
Mott, come back!
Right.
And not our Mott, not Barber Mott, but...
No. I was thinking, oh, great, we beamed up the anglerfish species. Here they are. I dig their cool Tron raincoats, though.
Now, that was really interesting because it looks like the costume designer integrated some electroluminescent wiring into their outfits, which, if you remember back in the early days of wild custom PC cases with lighting, with internal lighting.
Yeah.
EL wiring was all the rage because it doesn't consume a lot of power.
Yeah.
And so you just plug it in somewhere, just like a little single Molex pin somewhere on the motherboard, and it glows. And that means it's compact enough from a power standpoint that you can incorporate it into a costume, which is really clever. Like, cosplayers use EL wiring now, but for 1998, that was a really unusual effect.
I bet you the younger Michael Westmore did that. His dad did the makeup, and Michael would come in and do the electronic stuff, like the little blinking bleepy thing on Worf's bandolier, or some of the Borg light up effects. He would do all that stuff. So I bet you that was his. We'll have to ask him. Once again, the Doctor just gets one of the best lines of the episode with all those new personalities floating around. It's a shame we can't find one for you. Bravo. Thank you, Brannon or Jimmy or Ken or whoever came up with that line.
Wow. It's funny, but it's kind of like, boy, is this the right time for that?
Yeah. For the EMH, it's always the right time. I thought this was cool because, we've already had an episode where we reveal that Tuvok has some pretty twisted stuff floating around in his own psyche. And then I kind of hoped, I hope you can keep that out of Seven's head, because she's already got a lot going on. And this could be a volatile mix.
Yeah, just don't leave anything in there, please.
Yeah.
Now, fun things we find out about mind melds from this episode. I like that when putting your fingers on someone's face and chanting, my mind to your mind, your thoughts to my thoughts, very calmly, if that's not cutting it, then you just start yelling it like it's the Vulcan version of Serenity Now.
Yeah, that's what you need. Exactly.
Mind meld intensifies.
And I figured, look, as the show started to wrap up, I figured okay, we are in it now for some trippy and scary stuff. Not disappointed by where we ended up.
Yeah, so about that, in the scenes in the last act.
Yeah.
Where Tuvok is looking for Seven, but first he runs into this little girl.
Yeah.
Who apparently was assimilated at some point. I had not watched this episode since it originally aired. And I've got to say, those scenes, especially some of those lines they gave her, I don't like it here. I want to go home. Why are you leaving me here?
Yeah.
I found that, I'm a parent.
Yeah.
I found that incredibly upsetting.
Yeah.
Because that young actress really sells that scene.
Yeah.
Enough that it is super disturbing. It just brought me up short.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And actually, just to lighten it up a little bit before we wrap the segment, I will say that it was funny to me how Seven is questioning, genuinely, how do I show gratitude to the crew? And Janeway just comes in with, a very literal piece of labor. Go recalibrate the EPS manifold. It wasn't a learning moment. It wasn't oh, Seven, we did that because we care about you, and you can show that you care about the crew. It's no, go fix a thing. That's where her mind immediately goes. And I got to say, that final scene, what an absolutely great. They so quickly found this relationship between Seven and Naomi, and they've used it to great effect. Terrific way to end the episode, and so many pads.
Which is more powerful, the Tuvok finger or Tuvok shouty mind meld hands? Please discuss.
Hey everybody, within the sound of my voice, we have more exciting news for you from our friends over at Master Replicas.
That's right, Master Replicas signed a deal to take over the Eaglemoss stock and became the exclusive distributor of the official Star Trek Starships collection. But here's the catch. That deal ends on June 15th. So if you have been dreaming of adding some of these iconic ships to your very own fleet museum, now's the time to act.
That's right. June 15th, it's coming up, so make sure you take a look at Master Replicas right away. Now, they have always been the go-to place for Star Trek ships, but things are about to change, and they're running some incredible promotions right now that you should take advantage of. You can get 3 ships for the price of 2, or even 5 ships for the price of 3. It is a collector's and my very own dream.
Each week, they are featuring different themes. If you are listening to this before Sunday, you can grab deals on ships from Star Trek Voyager, Star Trek Enterprise, which I personally can recommend the NX-01 refit, which I dearly love, and the modern era of Star Trek on Paramount Plus, including Discovery, Strange New Worlds, Lower Decks, and more. And guess what? A new theme starts every Sunday, so there is always something new to look forward to.
You know, how convenient that we're in the middle of talking about Voyager, and the Voyager ships just went on special at Master Replicas. I have had my eye on Jupiter Station for so long. That is a very cool-looking model, so go over there and look it up. And here's the best part. As a special treat exclusively for Mission Log listeners, use the code MissionLog at checkout on masterreplicas.com and get an extra 10% off your purchase. That's right. You can do the 3 for 2 or 5 for 3, and just for our listeners, take an extra 10% off.
And this is not the end of Star Trek for Master Replicas. They've signed new contracts and are negotiating more. We've heard some whispers about exciting new plans in the works, and while we can't share details just yet, in fact, this is top-level Section 31 stuff we shouldn't even be discussing, but we feel like there is definitely some cool stuff coming, and now I am probably going to get disappeared by Section 31 before next week's show.
All right. So don't wait. Head over to masterreplicas.com. Use the code MissionLog and complete your collection before the deal ends on June 15th. The clock is ticking.
And keep an eye out, because Master Replicas is working on more fantastic products for other beloved franchises like Stargate, Foundation, Blade Runner, Dune, and Doctor Who. They're dedicated to bringing the best to true fans.
Master Replicas have always delivered top-quality replicas, and now's your chance to grab these Star Trek ships before they are gone forever. Visit masterreplicas.com today. And don't forget to use the code MissionLog for that exclusive 10% discount.
And remember, 2 things. The clock is ticking. That's the important thing. The other thing is you can't go wrong with that NX-01 refit, really. Head over to masterreplicas.com now and use the code MissionLog to get that extra 10% off. And happy collecting.
Now, Earl, I feel like this is one of those episodes where it's a very tech-to-tech. We've got... Okay, we have 2 things going on here. We have our character story, and definitely a lot of attention, rightfully so, paid to what's happening with 7 of 9. So there's that, but really it's a tech-to-tech. How do we make the thing stop so that 7 of 9 gets back to her usual self? But even if it is partly the character study for her, or at least the psychological drama for her, and it is a tech-to-tech, there is, I feel like, an interesting ethical, moral situation that we brush up against in the tech-to-tech when it comes to what's actually going on. And we made a little bit of a reference to it in the last segment, but I think we really need to pinpoint that here. Okay. This was cool that we get an idea of another thing that makes the Borg tick, the vinculum. Very cool idea, but not unlike Borg. Is that what you were thinking?
Yeah, exactly what I was thinking. The magic eye picture.
Yeah, okay. Now we get to wrestle with a little bit of the ethical question of how to take on the Borg. Now, the Voyager crew are a little bit removed from it because their real focus is 7, and they can't stop to debate with species 6339 about the ethics of what they're doing, but it is just right there in their lap, and they know what it's doing to 7 of 9. So let's talk about that a second. Is this plan that 6339 have, is that ethical? Is it okay for them to send a signal? Like, remember how far we've come with the Borg. So you had, remember Picard sending a signal to put the Borg to sleep. Fine. We're not killing them. We're not doing anything that is destructive. We're just making them quiet down and go take a nap while mommy and daddy can go take a nap as well, right? Then we fast forward a bit, and now there's an opportunity to disable and or kill the Borg by sending a virus to them through Hugh in iBorg. Okay, and we decide not to do that. And I think for very good reasons. But now here's this other species in the Delta Quadrant that have come up with something that sounds very similar to me. And it's not just that it's similar. There's this other layer on top of it that would actually drive them mad. Is that the impression you got?
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it did them any favors, because basically what it does is it makes them do the dirty work of self-destructing their own cube.
Yeah.
And so that kind of takes the responsibility off the shoulders of 6339, whose name we really should have asked, what can we call you?
They really should.
Are you all Bob?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They're from Planet Bob, from
Yes.
Bob City. Yeah.
It's kind of a situational ethics thing here, because at no point does Janeway really raise the arguments that Picard did.
Right. And I guess I was sort of waiting for a point where maybe, just maybe, Janeway would bring it up and they would have some counter argument. And then you would get into this thing about, like we talked about on Mission Log way back when with iBorg, can you justify the genocide of this entire species? Because, well, if you don't, then they might come assimilate you one day. And please go back and listen to that episode if you want to hear the discussion on that. That discussion launched a flurry of emails and comments, but we didn't get to that conversation here in the episode. Rather, it's just like, we need to save Seven, and we need to get as far away from these people as we can. So there wasn't room to have that discussion, but I have to think that discussion kind of lingers in the background, because this is another really kind of worrying thing. This species has this ability now to not just stay away from their enemies, but plant this and drive them all insane to the point that they all die and or kill each other.
Yeah. Now, on the one hand, it's made very clear these aliens, 6339, or Bob, are very heavily armed. Voyager is not going to be able to stand up to these people. So there is some level of self-preservation there, but there may be another level of self-preservation that is slightly less savory, which is, and we really don't know because the time is not given to this argument in the episode. Is Janeway thinking, oh, you know what? These guys doing what they're doing may make it a little bit easier for us to get home unimpeded.
See, there you go. Yeah. It's like, okay, well, we can wash our hands of this. They have this fearsome technology. Boy, we wouldn't implement that. But if it got implemented and it made our trip home easier, well, what can you do?
And that's a bit discomforting. I don't know how widespread knowledge of the events in iBorg is among Starfleet.
Yeah, good question.
We don't know which captains read which other captains' reports. And so, while it is tempting to try to frame one in terms of the other, that may be sealed under some kind of secrecy, and Janeway may know nothing about it.
Yeah.
I do have another question, and it's a bit less ethical. It's more a clarity of story thing. Why didn't we just torpedo the vinculum?
Yeah, that would have made things a little easier, right?
Yeah, as we are told, it has to be disabled. Well, blowing it up seems like it would be an excellent way to disable it.
Yeah, I mean, to actually beam it aboard, and I don't know what was to be gained by doing that deep an exploration of it. Seven told you what it was. We know there's something wrong with it, at least to the extent that it is damaging Seven. So just blow it up. There's plenty others around, and it's a piece of Borg tech anyway, which is sending out a signal that other Borg will find. So that could have made very short work of that whole problem.
Yeah, all you need in there is a single line about how just blowing it to bits might have some catastrophic effect on Seven.
Yeah.
And that would have offered some clarity. We already had the ticking time bomb in that we can't stay here and shut it down because the Borg are going to come back for it. Okay, I understand that part. Just a little bit more clarity on why we don't just blow it up and, hey, short episode this week, everyone.
Right. Yeah, would have explained that.
Another thing that I'm thinking about, and I'm going completely off notes here.
Yeah.
Returning to the ethical debate, because I can't stop thinking about that.
Okay.
That's a very good point.
Good stuff. I'm going to hear what our listeners have to say, too.
Janeway knows better than anyone that it is possible to sever someone from the collective and make them an individual again.
Mm-hmm.
So by embracing, or in this case, just stepping out of the way of any solution that's just going to go around wasting the populations of entire Borg cubes.
Yeah.
Every one of those drones that is lost to this manner of dealing with it that has been devised by species 6339.
Yeah.
Every one of those is an individual who will never be recovered. And I had this same question back in First Contact when Picard was machine gunning a Borg drone who turned out to be, you peel back the armor. It's a member of his own crew. It's like, dude, you know better than anyone.
Right.
It can be done.
Yes.
What are you doing?
Yep. Exactly.
Now, I have another question. Is the Vulcan mind meld still so poorly understood or documented by Federation medical science that the doctor can dismiss it as mumbo-jumbo? I've got a real problem with this.
Good. I want to hear your thoughts about this, because as you're saying that, I'm thinking about, okay, in Star Trek III, Search for Spock, the Katra, that was a new idea, and this was an ancient thing that had not been done for whatever reason. So there is a bit of hesitance there. There's a lot of misunderstanding about what it could be, how does it work, etc. But Vulcan mind meld, we've seen at least since Spock, and not to jump the timeline here, but I'm going to assume that things that occurred before Spock's time also included mind melds of some sort every now and then. So I have to think that even if it's a thing that humans don't fully understand, there's still, enough data about it in the Federation medical database about how effective it is, how much success rate there is in doing a mind meld, say, between a Vulcan and a human. Of course, Borg territory, a little bit different, sure, but that's still a human brain in Seven's skull. It seemed very dismissive of the Doctor, because I would also think that at this point it has been studied enough that even if we don't fully get it, we still get that there is a physical, sort of real-world, naturalistic explanation that it is a thing that happens, even if we can't pinpoint every single process that underlies it.
And even the thing with the Katra, you have to figure this is in Spock's service record somewhere. Died, feeling much better now, thank you.
Right. I got better.
Yeah, it's just a flesh wound. It's just a flesh wound. Are all of those events kept under seal because of their proximity to Genesis? Or, but like you said, there is mind meld stuff coming up in shows that happened before Voyager.
Yeah.
And so my objection here is that this is a known thing with known effects, and something that is understood, at least by the Vulcans, on a scientific level. But the Doctor is reacting to it like Tuvok is saying, okay, I'm going to pour a salt circle around the biobed and bring in some crystals.
Right. And that's, I think it's just a minor tweak of the dialogue there. I will not put on my writer's hat fully for this one, but it's a minor difference for the Doctor to say, like, A, it's very dangerous. B, I don't trust it in this instance. C, her mental stability right now may not be able to hold up. Like, all of those things are valid. But just to say that it's mumbo jumbo and there's no validity to this, well, dude, you're on Star Trek. you know, Doctor, you are on Voyager, and you are an EMH. You are a thing that up until now nobody has seen running 24/7. So I think we can still give this a try. I want to change subjects here really quickly before we wrap things up. This is one of those episodes where it's high concept sci-fi, of course, and I want to sort of boil down, though, to the very human interaction between a doctor and his patient, in this case, the EMH and 7 of 9, because there is such a lovely moment between them. 7 is experiencing this severe mental trauma, and she goes through such extreme stages of fear and sadness and defeat. I mean, I know we're going to come back to this in our wrap-up, but it's not just Jerry Ryan acting all the characters. It's also Jerry Ryan acting all these levels of 7 of 9 that we have not yet seen. So there is a tremendous amount of performance going on here by an actor who is given the burden already of having a lot of screen time, but having so much to do in that screen time on this episode. But I love what the Doctor does here. Total opposite from the way he treats Tuvok, right? He is so wonderfully consoling. And he reminds her that her experience isn't her fault. So her journey, feeling the vulnerability of not being invincible, it's so interesting to watch. It's so nice to see this play out. And this is so true to life. It's the same kind of experience that many patients have when they're faced with any number of serious medical concerns, when they feel out of control. And just to have that reassuring voice there to say, this isn't your fault. I'm here to help you. We're going to do everything we can. Like, it almost sounds cliche, but said with the warmth and sincerity of that, the way that it played out in this scene, I thought it was absolutely lovely.
Yeah, and if anyone out there is not getting that from their doctor in the 21st century, you need to reboot it.
Hey, you know what sounds like a good idea? Let's take the CPU of a Borg ship, which could probably Borg our ship, and let's park it 30 feet away from the warp core.
All right, we have arrived at the end of our show, and as we do each week, we ask ourselves if the episode holds up, and are there any morals, meanings, or messages, anything to learn from our experience. So, Earl, again, welcome. Thank you for sitting in this week as the co-host, and I will pose it to you first. Infinite Regress, does the episode hold up by whatever measures you use to determine if an episode of Star Trek holds up?
That's an interesting question because like I said, I don't think I had watched this one since it first aired. And I probably watched it once at that time. There was a lot that I didn't remember here. And so it was almost like, an all-new episode of Star Trek for me. And one that absolutely does hold up. From a production standpoint, I am going to out myself as a David Livingston fan here. For all the weird that Voyager pours on in its attempts to be at the front of the high-concept pack.
Yeah.
On Sci-Fi TV at the time, which, keep in mind, for context, in the late 90s, at this point in 98, they're up against Hercules, they're up against Xena, they're up against Babylon 5. I think Team Knight Rider was still on, but let's not talk about Team Knight Rider ever again.
Yeah.
None of this lands if you don't have a director whose aesthetic is sympathetic to the story. Because inept direction could completely sabotage the best script.
Yeah.
Good direction can elevate it.
Yeah.
In addition to good direction, we have an amazing performance from Jerry Ryan here. Her range is almost scary, and this whole episode is on her shoulders.
Yeah.
One thing that really struck me was how disconcerting the scene is in sickbay, where the doctor is having to put her under, and there is just this guttural, lower register scream coming out of her. And this is half an hour after her voice went up 2 octaves to tell Naomi, hey, let's go play.
Right.
This episode had to be thrilling and exhausting for Jerry Ryan. It's almost thrilling and exhausting to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, even just going back and putting it into the context that she didn't know these characters, she didn't know the species that she was playing, to inhabit that as quickly and easily as she, well, not easily, I'm not going to say that it was easy, but to inhabit it as quickly as she did on a tight weekly production schedule and play the personal levels that Seven is going through, it is just a shockingly good performance. It's incredible. This is one of those episodes that, and we always set it up this way to say, when we ask if an episode holds up, we use whatever parameters we think that means. It's not there's not a set criteria that we decide. Because you could take an episode like this, and even if there were flaws in the production, you could still single out a performance like this and say, yeah, but the performance is so worth watching, you can forgive all the other things in the episode. There's nothing else in this episode to forgive, because you have Jerry at the top of her game, and like you just said, you got David Livingston coming in and just cranking everything up to 11. The choices with moving camera, the choices with the really awkward, disorienting angles that he's getting, and just getting the most out of the actors, that is truly a collaborative thing that we're seeing here. So by every measure that I can think of to judge whether this holds up, it absolutely holds up. There are times in Star Trek when if you kind of force the characters to be something different from what they usually are, mirror universe, that can go the wrong way. Like every now and then it's fun, but then if it's too much or if the premise isn't really solid, then I think we can get really tired of it. But then you have opportunities like this come along where you get to break the mold entirely and either inhabit the character or have that character inhabited by something or someone else. And it just really opens it up again to show the possibilities of what this kind of storytelling can do. You said it a moment ago, we kick around the words high concept a lot, but that is a phrase that is so applicable to Voyager, especially Voyager when it's at its best. You, the audience, have to go along with the premise first, which is the high concept part of it. Then that allows you to go along the character journey. And that's what they did here in perfect balance. I think it's so well done. Look, you already said it. Jerry Ryan is just so good here. It is full of pathos, but it's also just fun. I do wonder how many times they're going to let Seven get away with endangering everyone, but, whatever. That's just Star Trek being Star Trek. And at the end of the day, look, the problem is just one of those tech-the-tech situations. You have to come up with a tech-the-tech resolution. And it kind of feels like they're just experimenting with this really great premise, and then at the very end they kind of run out of steam. It's like, okay, we got to solve the thing very quickly now so we can get rid of these aliens, carry on with our show, and revive our character back to who she really is. But even with that, we just got to go along this great journey with this character with an amazing performance at the center of it. You said you hadn't watched this in however many 20-plus years. I honestly can't wait to watch it again because it's just so good. And not only good, but kind of crucial to our understanding of Seven of Nine and of her relationship with the rest of the crew, because I loved seeing them rally around her the way that they do, with the exception of Janeway saying, what have I done? But maybe that'll bring us to our morals, meanings, messages. So I'll just jump right in and say, I think 7 really as a proxy for other Borg being confronted with her victims that's just such an interesting path to explore anyway. That is fertile ground for drama. I'm going to come back to that in just a second. But like I said a moment ago, what I really love is seeing the crew rally around her. I think it's so nice to see somebody who came in with all this suspicion, her of the crew of her, but then really get ingratiated into everybody around her. And they're pulling for her. So is there a message, like a you see Timmy moment here? Maybe not beyond the experience of putting 7 into the shoes of the people who are victims of the Borg. If anything, this solidifies her determination to stay the individual that she is. That's what's nice about seeing an episode like this on its own, but also in context of where she's been and where she is on her journey. And outside of that, look, we just get more of that kind of feel-good family bond of the Voyager crew reinforced and see that compassion that they show to any of their fellow crew when they're in need. So that's what I picked up. How about you, Earl?
There was a line that stuck out to me. Your job is to keep trying to hold on even when you think you can't.
Oh,
that's a neat line.
Yeah.
But that could be such a hollow statement if it wasn't backed up with active support. And I think that's the real message here. The Doctor and the Captain and Tuvok give 7 that support. Like you said, they rally around her. Good on them. Even Chakotay has changed his tune on her ability to adapt to relatively normal human life. If you call being stranded in the Delta Quadrant normal.
For them.
Yeah, for them, it's Tuesday.
Yeah.
But too often in the here and now, people with the best of intentions, the same things they used to pave the road to hell, they say things like that and do not back it up with anything. And they're just platitudes. Support and listen. Don't patronize, don't just spew platitudes, no matter how well-meaning they may be. If there is no support behind it, it's just words. I appreciated how both the Doctor and Tuvok did this here. It's kind of a pity that this level of support didn't exist way back then with, Coven and retrospect, but I will gladly accept this episode as the apology.
Mission Log is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. If you would like to support us directly, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog for early access to shows and the Mission Log Discord. Our website is missionlogpodcast.com, and for more Star Trek news and discussion, visit trekmovie.com.
On the next Mission Log, nothing human.
Some of the music for Mission Log provided by Warp 11, online at warp11.com. Special thanks to consulting producers, Matt Esposito, Homer Frizzell, Julie Miller, Mike Richards, Mike Shadwell, Paul Shadwell, and David Takechi. You don't have any homework before next week's show. There's no point. Naomi has all the pads on the ship right now. End transmission.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.